Hi, so Emma here. I'm coming on for a live Q&A with Rosie, our baby feeding counsellor. So she's going to introduce herself and answer some of the common questions about breast and bottle feeding. So just to say that the sessions we run are suitable for whatever your feeding choices are. We're mostly or completely passionate about oh hey, here she is. So we invite her in. Bring Rosie on camera. Hey, adding, adding. Hey, Rosie.
Hello!
Hey.
I've managed to get it to work.
Yeah. So the only thing is, what I've found doing this is there is a tiny bit of a time lag. So sometimes we just have to jump in and interrupt each other if you've got something to say.
Okay, no worries.
Um, and I might interrupt you as well. So we've got someone else on as well. So let's get started. So, um, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rosie. So I work with Emma around infant feeding. I've been interested, obviously, since I had my children, and I volunteered to start with in the community, running groups, at the hospital, and then I landed myself a paid role for the NHS. So I've done that for 2 years, and I've just got myself a role, in a supervisory capacity, which is quite exciting on a new project. Um, so yeah, quite passionate about infant feeding and supporting mums really to achieve their own feeding goals, whatever they might be. So that might be like 3 days, three
Yeah,
months, three
yeah,
years.
yeah.
But it's important to support mums to reach their personal goals rather than, looking at
Mm.
recommendations or what have you.
Yeah,
So
I think
yeah,
that's what we're both really passionate about, isn't it? Supporting parents to do what they want to do with all the information, and being
yes,
able to give that information to people in an unbiased way.
yeah,
Because so some of the notes that I've just put here is yeah that we're about information and facts, but there is a lot of myths around infant feeding.
definitely, yeah.
Here
Mm.
in the UK, we don't follow the guidance, so the law does not uphold the guidance that we know supports um, parents making choices. Um,
Yeah.
and is it about 80% of mums want to breastfeed?
Yes, there's a very high initiation rate, but so initiation is just if the baby has that initial first breastfeed, um, and so that counts as initiating breastfeed. So there will be mums whose goal is to just give that first feed, which is fine, but there's a lot of mums, a very high percentage, that want to go further than that, but they don't manage to pursue that. So there are um there's evidence that mums are being disappointed by their feeding
Mm,
experiences,
mm.
which is obviously quite sad, really.
Yeah, and so one of the first questions that I had written down, something that I see on mums groups a lot, is mums warning other mums that the midwives and the health professionals are going to try to put pressure on them to breastfeed and just to ignore that pressure and to do what they want to do. So what is this about, the pressure that mums feel under?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with quite a lot of healthcare professionals, midwives and health visitors, and there is a need and a protocol for them to promote breastfeeding. That's part of their job role is to promote breastfeeding. I feel like where the problem lies is that there's the promotion without the support. So
Mm,
that feels like an instruction to do something without telling them how to do it. So it's a bit like someone saying, you really, really need to drive a car, but I'm not going to teach you. Figure it out
mm,
yourself without killing yourself. So it's really, really hard because that's the gap. They have the time to say, oh, you should breastfeed because it reduces
mm,
this and it reduces that. And,
yeah.
they have that. They don't have the capacity. They're just too busy, unfortunately,
Mm,
and some of them don't have the sort of expert knowledge. They're not infant feeding experts, they're midwives. So sometimes it's a gap of knowledge, sometimes it's a lack of time, sometimes it's a bit of both.
Mm,
So I think that's where mums are getting frustrated in my experience.
mm,
Um, that's where they're sort of tripping up because they hear all this stuff like you should do this because it's really good for you and it's really good for your baby.
feels
And so
like
they're
such
given that
an
motivation.
impossible thing, doesn't it? It's like climbing a
Yeah,
mountain, isn't it? And
yeah, exactly. I
you just
mean, I'm sure it's great for you to climb mountains and do lots of exercise like that. But, it's not possible for everyone, or it is, but it's a little bit more hard work than people think, or you do
Mm,
need support. Like you couldn't climb Mount Everest without someone at base camp.
mm,
So, you can't feed really without that information and support to do
yeah,
so. I
yeah.
mean, once you're going, and that's it, and it's dead easy. It's those early days and weeks that's the gap really.
Yeah, it's always
So
that first bit, isn't it? I think that was the advice that my gran had given me, and I question it, but it was good advice in a way. Was like get over that first bit. But that kind of
yeah.
brings me on to my next question: is that should breastfeeding hurt? Is it about just toughening up your nipples at the start?
Well, no, because I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, that makes no sense, does it? Because if it hurt, no one would do it, and then we wouldn't have got to 7.5 billion of us on the planet.
Mm.
So no, it shouldn't hurt. Does it hurt? Yes. Sometimes it does hurt.
Mm.
Um, but a lot of that is like 90% of that would be just positioning because we never see it, so we don't know what it looks like.
Mm. Mm. It's a lot like what we do with the baby wearing as well, because you don't see people wearing slings and things
Yeah,
around you. Um,
yeah,
you don't know what normal is, and a lot of the stuff we see on
no,
TV, isn't it? It's like baby really high up, and
yeah,
yeah, we just don't see it because boobs are
yeah.
sexual,
We
aren't they?
we position babies how we've seen them held, which is
Mm,
positioned for either just comforting or for bottle feeding. And it's a
mm,
completely different position, you know. And there's a lot of, I think mums tend to internalize things. So if it isn't working, they tend to be like, well, it must be me. I'm broken. I can't do it.
mm,
When
mm.
actually, if so, literally sometimes I have supported mums and it's a matter of millimeters adjustment,
Yeah.
tiny, tiny little adjustments, and it doesn't hurt anymore, and baby can feed really well,
Mm,
and you're off.
mm,
That's not always the case, but
mm.
positioning and getting that latch is really important, which,
Yeah.
um, I think you've got to take your time with that. If you're a midwife and you're rushing around the postnatal ward, you might not have time to sit with a mum for an hour or half an hour to really get that right and really help her with that. And it
Mm.
can be tricky because it's like wrestling an octopus. These babies are hands everywhere and wriggling about, and it's tricky. It's tricky. So that's where the support again comes in. But no, it shouldn't
Yeah.
hurt. And if it does hurt, my advice would be seek help.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember with my midwife, I was really lucky to have one midwife all the way through my pregnancy. So she sat with me for lots of visits afterwards. I remember one day and it was hurting so much. And when she arrived, I was like, oh no, he's just fed and now I need you to sit here and I wanted you to watch the feed. And she was like, it's all right, I'll make you brew. And she just like sat and we had a chat about everything for an hour and waited for him to be hungry again. And I just think that is so invaluable, isn't it? Somebody that has
Yeah,
got
yeah,
that time. And
yeah,
I remember her just tweaking it a little bit. And I was like, I went from absolute agony to no pain at all. But then when she
yeah,
went, the next feed was the same. It took me
yeah.
ages
I
to
can't
get
do
the hang of it.
it. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely. And just the listening to new mums, they've just been through a huge experience, like a massive,
mm,
life-changing experience of birth.
mm,
Whatever
mm,
way that went, that is life-changing.
mm,
So, just spending the time to listen and to hear them out about how it went and or how they're finding
mm,
becoming a mum,
mm.
how they're finding the sleepless nights and the sudden sort of dependence of this little person. So,
Yeah.
that listening that midwife did for you, that's really worth its weight in gold as well.
Yeah, I think we are as women, we're very, especially around birth, very open to feeling others' emotions. And I think when
Yeah,
you feel that somebody, you don't want to be putting somebody out, you don't want to be mithering. I hear this a lot from mums, especially at the Sling
yeah,
Library, that they're struggling, but they didn't want to phone. You're like, there is
yeah,
support people, just phone them, just phone at the tiniest little thing. And there are people that will come and
yeah.
sit with you. And
I can
maybe,
certainly speak for myself and say that I don't mind helping anyone with breastfeeding at any time or any, if I met you message, if anyone messages me, I sometimes get a friend of a friend, or someone that I haven't spoken to for years, and they'll message me a little like, oh, this is happening, what should I do about this, and I'm more than happy to, and I think that's true of everyone who supports new
yeah,
mums,
yeah, yeah.
antenatally and postnatally. We
Mm,
just really want to help. That's
yeah,
it,
yeah.
so don't feel like you put out. And the
Mm,
same if you're on the postnatal ward, ring the buzzer. That's what I would say.
yeah,
Just ring the
totally.
buzzer. That's what they're there for. Get the help.
Yeah, I mean the same
Definitely.
here as well on any of the WhatsApp groups, the pregnancy yoga. I've kind of got peer support level knowledge, and I know, and
Yeah.
Rosie is the one that I refer on to. So quite often it's something quite simple, and if someone's then tried the basics, you're the person that I refer on to because you're
Yeah.
shit hot.
Well, sometimes it isn't, unfortunately, a case of sort of just slightly tweaking position and attachment. Sometimes there are other issues.
Mm,
I don't know if anyone's asked about this in any of the messages, but there are other things that could cause difficulties with feeding.
mm,
So it's definitely worth getting some help and support, and if you
mm.
don't feel that it's going right.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you fix the basics and then you can look at everything else. But it's very, very, very rare that whatever it is can't be sorted out in one way or another.
So,
So,
what can we tell parents is the best thing to do to get feeding off to a good start? What can they do?
well, they'll have heard it a million times if you've been to any antenatal classes or ever seen the midwife, and that is skin to skin. So that is definitely massively important. I mean, that's hugely important, however you intend to feed, that initial skin to skin after the birth. But certainly to initiate breastfeeding, that's a great way to get going. Because babies, if you Google and you look up on YouTube, breast crawl, babies will quite often just self latch and then they just do it. They just know
Mm,
how to do it and they do it. There's no sort of wrestling the octopus or that kind of thing. They will just do it. It does take a while, so it can take like an hour after birth,
and you
sometimes a little bit
show the video
more.
of this in the antenatal class that we run,
We
don't you?
do. Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah, we have an amazing DVD showing what a baby goes through. And it's quite amazing, really. There's like a 9-step process before they feed. And each of those steps is like really important. And unfortunately, if they get interrupted, they tend to start again. So if your baby gets to like step 4 and then they're taken away and weighed and brought back, they'll go back to step 1 and sometimes they get too tired to get to the last step, which is the feed. So we do sort of chat a lot about putting in your birth plan about that hour after birth, because everyone thinks up to the birth, don't they, when they're
Mm,
planning.
mm,
But remember that special time for you and your family after to get to know each other, and to have that private time of just having your baby in skin to skin for as long as you can. I mean, 3 days is great. There's no rush. I know people buy really cute little baby grows, but
mm,
actually, you
mm.
know, save it for later.
This is what I've
Because
been telling
actually,
people about in the
yeah,
Sling Library as well. Don't dress your
just
baby. Don't dress them. Just tuck them
yeah,
into a
yeah,
lovely
no,
sling. Mm,
yeah, definitely. And it's so warm in the hospital anyway. You don't need to worry about that. So, that you can just keep them skin to skin. I mean, obviously, if you need to go to the loo, have a shower, whatever, there's all those things happen. But predominantly for the like have a little baby moon and just have them in that skin to skin. Certainly the first hour to 2 hours after the birth, and then, for the next few days really. And it just really helps babies to get your milk to come in, and to have as much colostrum as they need and to feel really safe because they've been part of your body for like 9 months. So they kind of feel like they're not ready to just suddenly go, and you're in a cot.
mm,
They like to be on your body for a
mm.
little bit longer.
You
So
want
that
to,
would
you
be
just mentioned
definitely.
colostrum. Do you want to briefly say what colostrum is?
Yeah, so colostrum is the first milk. It's like massively full of fats. and antibodies, and it primes the gut. So a baby's gut has never digested food, and it needs a little bit of teaching how to do that, and a little bit of protection. So the colostrum will coat the gut. It flushes out all the meconium, gets rid of that horrible greeny black tar, which I don't know if anyone's not warned you. They have greeny black tar poos, which is quite grim. But they flushes all that through, primes the gut, prepares the gut, kickstarts the immune system, and it also is full of fat and protein for energy and things, so that they've got the energy to feed. So it's absolutely awesome stuff. There's not a lot of it though, so if you try and express and you get a teaspoon, that's great. That's loads. So that's worth bearing in mind, that there isn't a lot of it, but that's primarily because it's just absolutely packed, really nutrient dense. And that's for the first sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 days is the colostrum, and then the milk starts to mature and it looks a bit more like what you'd expect milk to look like. So it's a bit more sort of white and watery. So yeah, so that, I mean, some mums do just want to feed the colostrum and move on then. And obviously it is amazing stuff, so that's great. And then some mums want to continue going forward. So yeah, that's colostrum.
Yeah. So skin to skin, know about the colostrum, because I have heard mums say that's one of the massive myths. I knew a mum that gave a bottle until her milk came in because she just didn't know that colostrum was amazing stuff. So there's massive gaps in knowledge, and sometimes the things you think you know, we don't always know what the facts are.
Yeah. And there can be a lot of fear around, well, there's no milk. I've tried to hand express and there's hardly anything coming out. Well, you will only get drops. So knowing that that's normal can really help as well. Otherwise, you just think, well, that's it, I'm broken, I don't make milk. But actually, no, you do. You make amazing little tiny drops of gold, basically. So, yeah.
And that is one of the biggest reasons, I think, for mums giving up, isn't it? Is that they don't have enough milk. And it's actually the least likely reason. Sometimes it's true, but sometimes, mostly, I think, is it like 98% of
it's quite rare. There are conditions where milk making may be more of a challenge, but it's never impossible. So, in things, any hormonal imbalances and things like that could potentially, not always, but could cause issues. But it's best to sort of suck it and see how it goes. And then if it's going well, it's going well. And if it isn't, then you can get expert help and they can look into the possible causes and things with you. But yeah, it's very rare that you wouldn't have enough milk. Very, very rare.
So shall we go through some of the other things that we cover in our class? Because I'm conscious, I don't know what time it is because my phone doesn't tell me while the video is on.
No, I know, mine neither.
Because we could sit here and talk about this all night.
Oh, God, yes.
So what we'll cover the main kind of myths around breastfeeding, although we've covered a few there. We'll go more into depth about that breast crawl, the moments after birth, and what behaviours the babies do, because it's so cool seeing all the little head bobbing and the arms and I think it's really interesting to for dads as well and partners and even mums and sisters, if they're going to be there, to just be aware of what that behaviour is and how cool and amazing it is.
And they can really be part of that bonding process, because the baby will actually familiarise. When they do the familiarising, they do that with dad as well. If he puts his head about here, they can see dad and they can hear dad, and they've heard dad before. So that's another one that's really
so
quite
we'll go
amazing.
through position and attachment as well. So if baby's not self latching at the breast crawl, how to hold them in your arms, some different positions. So of course, rugby ball. So we'll go through that and how to get baby on. We have some information about what is a good latch, how to tell that baby's latched on properly, so that they're not sucking right at the end. They've got a nice, good mouthful of nipple, all that kind of stuff. What else?
We go through as well how you can tell that feeding is going well, because I think that's another thing for mums, is it can be quite tricky, you can't measure it.
Yeah.
you know, you kind of have to take a leap of faith. So we talk about all the ways that your baby will communicate to you,
Hmm.
whether or not they are feeding well and whether things are going well, so that you know that you can be reassured, you know, that everything's going fine,
Mm.
or that you can spot that it isn't and get help nice and early, because it's like
Yeah.
with everything really that,
Hmm.
you know,
Oh,
the
and that's
earlier
the
you
other
get,
one,
the help
feeding
more the
cues,
better.
how to tell when
Yeah.
baby's hungry as well, because a starving, hungry, and screaming baby is going to be really difficult to get them latched on.
Yeah.
So picking up on that early and how to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And tuning into your baby and you know, find, because it's getting, you're getting to know each other. So there's things, there's ways that you can sort of tune in and get to know your baby, get to know their cues, what they want, what they mean by it, all that sort of thing, really, and
Mm.
really open those lines of communication. So yeah.
Yes, and it's a really good chance to get together with other parents as well, and just
Yeah.
discuss the feelings around it.
With my baby.
Um,
My baby's joined us.
um, yeah, and we've had amazing feedback, haven't we, when we've
Yeah.
run these
People have
sessions.
always really enjoyed it and found it really like a safe space and non-judgmental, and you can ask
Mm,
anything you like, and we're not
mm,
here just to promote one way of feeding your baby. You know, we're here to help people make informed decisions and support them in whatever that decision is. So,
mhm.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, shall we wrap up then? Our next
Yes,
session is next Tuesday night, but we
it
are
is, yeah.
running these bi-monthly. So, do check out my website, the page as well for the dates, or you can just private message the page as well. Anything else
Yes.
to add?
Yeah. Just that it would be really, really lovely to see lots of you there,
Mhm.
and answer all your questions, and yeah, it's always a
Cool.
fun night.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Thanks for the interview, Rosie.
No problem. See you soon.